Jarvis, you there?
At your service, sir.
Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Jonathan, and today we're gonna make an Iron Man helmet. Now this is the first helmet I've ever done, so I didn't really want this to be a complete step-by-step tutorial. You know, there's a lot of great channels on YouTube that do that kind of thing, and they're gonna do it a lot better than I would. More so, I wanted this to be a fun and enjoyable video of how you start with something like this and end up with something like this without spending 10 minutes talking about sanding. So let's go. This file was purchased from CG Trader for about $30. There are free files out there. They may not be as accurate, but they're still very good, especially for being free. The entire helmet printed in 3 parts. It took about 70 hours. We had the faceplate, the chin piece, and then the upper helmet piece. The next step, sanding. I start with 80 grit and I work my way all the way up to 400 grit. I would really say if you want to get into 3D printing, make sure you can find a way to make sanding enjoyable. Real quick, Jonathan from the future here, guys. I just wanted to say, if you notice, I'm using an electric hand sander in the video, and there's a lot of pros and cons to that. You know, the pro is obviously you save a ton of time, but a con is if you stay over one specific part of the PLA too much, it'll heat up and it can cause it to kind of like reshape itself. And I got some clips that I'll insert, and I did that on the faceplate, like right above the brow, and it kind of indented it. If that happens to you, all you really need to do is get some Bondo from Walmart and just keep applying it. You know, apply with your finger, let it dry, apply some more until that is gone, sand it down, and you're good to go. My choice of primer is Rust-Oleum 2-in-1 filler primer. I'll apply 2 light coats, wait about 10 minutes in between, and then about 30 minutes after the second coat, I'll apply 2 more heavier coats. And then after letting that cure for 36 to 48 hours, it's time for more sanding. Now to save some time and just boredom, just know that the next steps are more sanding, priming, sanding, priming. Now after applying the primer for the last time, then you wet sand with 800 grit. And once you're done with the 800 grit, you should have it nice and smooth and ready to go. But some of the best advice I probably ever heard was, once you think you're done sanding, sand a little more. So honestly, probably the hardest part of this for me so far has been figuring out what paint colors I want to use. Because the last thing that I want is to put all this work into this helmet and then having the red be off or the gold be off. So the first part in tackling that task was figuring out exactly which colors I wanted to use. And I ended up settling on Duplicolor, red, and gold. This is an automotive paint, and from everywhere I've read, this is, if not the best, some of the best paint to use on an Iron Man helmet. So then my next issue was figuring out how to actually apply it to the helmet, because you have to put a base coat, or at least I thought you had to put a base coat. Do you go with white? Do you go with gold, silver, not gold, but do you go with white, silver, black? Do you go with matte? Do you go with gloss? That's all options that you have to choose from, and that's where all of these came into play. So, far and away the biggest issue I had at first was, this is supposed to be a gloss paint. But when I would apply it, it would automatically do this. And I'm not smart, so I couldn't figure out why. And after a while, after some research, I ended up figuring out that The humidity in Louisiana is just way too high. Even on our best days at this time of year, like, we're not gonna touch that humidity. So that was probably my biggest problem, but that could kind of be remedied using a clear coat, which not every paint can take a clear coat if you know anything about painting. So all that to say, the two colors or the two applications I ended up going with were this gold and this red. But of course, with my luck, in my honest opinion, this gold looked the best with a black gloss base coat, and this red looked the best with a silver base coat. So after the base coats were laid down, it was time to apply just the regular red and gold paint. The gold paint to the faceplate was by far the easiest because it's just straight gold. There was no taping off required. I just applied a couple light coats and moved on to the rest of the helmet. The chin piece and the top of the helmet were actually a little more difficult because they had, these different sections that some parts needed gold, some parts needed red. And then these blue taped off sections were this gunmetal gray. And it was just a little bit more time consuming because, you had to paint an area, wait for that to dry, then tape that off, and then paint another area. But finally we got all that done, and then it was time to apply just a couple light coats of clear coat, which just, helps it shine and kind of keeps its pristineness, I guess. And the final step is just adding these flexible LED eyes to the faceplate. I've seen in the past where these eyes were a little bit more difficult to work with, but these new updated ones are literally just plug and play. So I added the battery to make sure they worked before I glued them in place with a couple drops of Gorilla Glue. Want to see something cool? Watch. You ready?